Hi everyone, Chrissy Liz here, and these are my top 5 tips on how to start managing your finances the right way. Stay tuned. Tip number 1, use cash wherever possible. Actually, scratch that. Use cash for everything. The reason being is that when you are using cash, you are able to see exactly how much money you have in that moment. With credit cards and sometimes with debit cards, because we don't see what's in our account when we're looking to spend, and sometimes we're not very proactive in checking what's in our accounts when we're looking to spend, we either tend to overextend our budget or spend more than we're willing to, or when it comes to credit cards, we incur more debt. Using cash allows us to exercise patience, exercise self control, and it allows us to gain financial discipline as opposed to the instant gratification that you would get if you used a credit card. A credit card is basically a loan that you would have to repay in full at the end of each month. And if you're unable to repay the loan in full, you will be charged interest. So, when starting off with your finances, you want to learn certain disciplines so that you stay within your budget more often than not. Debit cards aren't as bad as credit cards because essentially a debit card, when you use it, you're just deducting from whatever you have in your account. But I also put them in the danger zone a little bit because of the fact that, well, specifically in my case, sometimes I don't check my account, and so I spend more than what I'm actually willing to spend. So I would say, as much as possible, use cash. In fact, put your credit cards, your debit cards in places that aren't as easily accessible. Definitely not your wallet. Put it maybe in a drawer somewhere where, it's still accessible for if you need it for emergencies, but they're not as easily accessible for day-to-day spending. Tip number 2, before you can start a budget, I would recommend tracking your expenses for at least 6 months to a year. The reason for this is because typically when we start a budget and we haven't tracked our expenses, we haven't seen our own spending habits, we tend to estimate what we think we should be spending rather than what we actually do spend. So, what you want to do is to track everything, your monthly expenses, down to the spontaneous whatever that you buy. Track things that you're saving for, like you're putting aside money for. Track every single thing. By doing that, you're able to assess or identify financial issues that you have. Once your financial habits have been identified, you are now able to work on improving on those that you would like to change. After this is all said and done, this is where tip number 3 comes in. And if it's not obvious already, tip number 3 is to start your budget. Obviously, prioritizing your monthly bills and monthly expenses. Tip number 3, start an emergency fund. One of the things in life that we definitely cannot predict is the unexpected. However, when it comes to finances, we can sort of prepare for it. Hear me out. An emergency fund is simply money put into a bank account, preferably, and that's set aside for unplanned expenses such as medical bills, car repairs, home repairs, things of that nature. Having a sufficient amount of funds stored up is crucial in helping you to avoid relying on things like credit cards or loans that can easily turn into debt. Also, in instances or in cases such as an emergency, it stops you from using monies from your active income. Not having an emergency fund can derail a lot of your financial goals. Now you may ask, Chrissy, how does one start an emergency fund? How much should be in an emergency fund? I would say to save up at least 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. And those living expenses are the bare minimum. Break it down to what you need to survive for 3 to 6 months. So, housing and food. And well, in Trinidad, I would say transport as well, because traveling money, whew, sometimes it could be very expensive. Now, I believe that this goes without saying, but the first time that you get paid, you do not want to spend or take that entire check and devote it towards your emergency fund. What you do is that you estimate how much money you're going to need for housing, food, and transport for 3 to 6 months. And then you're going to divide that by maybe, let's say, 12 months. So let's say you give yourself a year to accumulate your emergency fund. If you would like more information on emergency funds, put a comment in the description below. I will be more than happy to go into further detail and explain more on this. Tip number 4. After you have learned how to use cash and control your spending, after you've tracked your finances, started your budget, and created an emergency fund, I would then say start a savings account. Technically, your emergency fund is a savings account. However, it's basically rainy day money. After you have achieved your goal, then you can implement kind of what I call the fun savings account. So it's basically the savings account for what you hope to gain in the future. So whether it's you want to have a car, whether you want to buy a house, these are things that cost a lot of money and that you may not be able to pay for with your current paycheck. However, when you put aside small increments over the course of, let's say, 5 years, and you look back in that account, you would find a substantial amount. Now, it should be noted that your emergency fund and your savings account, whether it's a savings account for a new car, a new house, whatever it may be, should remain separate, as in it should not be in the same bank account. Tip number 5 is actually kind of an expense, but hear me out. Find out about insurance. Get yourself insured. The reason being is that, if I'm not mistaken, and if things have not changed, the younger that you are and the less health issues that you have, the cheaper your insurance would be. So for instance, let's say insurance companies charge, I don't know, $500 for an adult of 35 who has a heart condition. If you are a 20-something-year-old in peak health, you're more likely to pay something along the lines of maybe, let's say, $100 or $200. And I don't believe that this increases over time. So once you start paying at $200, you will continue paying $200 unless protocols have changed. This is one rule I would say find out more information about. Investigate different insurance companies and what are their policies so that you know what I'm saying is correct. But the last time I checked, the younger that you are and the healthier that you are, the cheaper your insurance will be in the long haul. So, thank you for watching this video. I hope that this information has been useful to you all. If not, give us a comment in the description below. What are things that you think should be on this list? Guys, give us a like, share, subscribe. Thank you for tuning in again, and God bless.